ሰላም ጤና ይስጥልን የተከበራችሁ አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን፣ ሶስት አስቸኳይ አንገብጋቢ መደመጥ ያለባቸው ሀገራዊ መረጃዎችን ይዘን መጥተናል። የመጀመሪያው ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን የኤርትራው ፕሬዝዳንት ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ ግብጽ በነበረው ቆይታ ባደረገው ቃለ መጠይቅ ላይ የአፍሪካ ህብረት ሙቷል፣ የአፍሪካ ህብረት ካለ አይቆጠርም፣ የአረብ ሊግ ይግዛን፣ የአረብ ሊግ ያስተዳድረን፣ እንዲሁም የአፍሪካ መሪዎችን ሁሉ አዋርዷል። የአፍሪካ ህብረትም በአስቸኳይ በዚህ ሰው ላይ ፈጣን የሆነ ማዕቀብና እርምጃ መውሰድ እንዳለበት እየተነገረ ነው። የዚህን ቃለ መጠይቅ ሙሉ ትርጉም በአረበኛ ያደረገውን ቃለ መጠይቅ ሙሉ ትርጉም ይዘን መተናል። አብራችሁን ቆዩ እንድታዳምጡትም። በመቀጠል ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን የተለመደው የኢትዮጵያ ጥንታዊ ጠላት የሆነው ህውሃት አሁንም በአፋር ህዝቦች ላይ በዙ 23 ታጅቦ የከፈተውን ውጊያ በምስልና ከስፍራውም የደረሰንን ሙሉ ዝርዝር መረጃ እናቀርብላችኋለን። በዚህ ዙሪያም ጌታቸው ረዳም እንዲሁም የአፋር ክልላዊ መንግስትም መግለጫ አውጥቷል። ሙሉውን ተሰሙታላችሁ የተከበራችሁ አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን። እንዲሁም ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን ከወደ አማራ ክልል የሰበር የምስራች ተሰምቷል። ይኸውም የአማራ ክልል ፋኖ ከመንግስት ጋር ለመደራደር ዝግጁ መሆኑንና እንዲሁም ዝግጅቱን ማጠናቀቁን የወጣውን መረጃ እናስደምጣችኋለን። አብራችሁን ቆዩ። የዩቲዩብ ቻናሉን ሰብስክራይብ እያደረጋችሁ ግቡ።
Government says TPLF fighters crossed into Magale Warda late Tuesday, seizing 6 villages in Tansa Kabele and shelling civilians with mortars and Zu-23 guns. Commanders for Shaha Manjes and Johannes Medid named as key instigators. Officials warn of self-defense if attacks continue, calling it an open war on Afar people. TPLF denies provocation, claims federal government ignored repeated warnings and allowed escalation to force confrontation. Party accuses Afar authorities of blocking Tigray access routes and using civilians as bargaining chips. Getachew Reda, Ethiopia's Minister of East African Affairs, rejected the claims, accusing the rogue group of fabricating the incident to derail Pretoria and drag the federal government into conflict. He called the alleged invasion a Shabia Eritrean agenda, executed under TPLF hardliners, urged Afar to resist provocation, and warned that using Afar roads or people as bargaining chips will fail. Reda stressed the Tigray Defense Forces have no federal-related agenda and questioned progress on Pretoria's 3rd anniversary, saying, "We are the ones truly committed."
የኢትዮጵያ ጥንተ ጠላት የሆነው ከሃዲው ህውሃት በነ ጀነራል ምግባይና በነ ጀነራል ማንጁስ እየተመራ በአፋር በኩል በኢትዮጵያ ላይ ከፍተኛ ጦርነት ከፍቷል። በዙ 23 በድሽቃና በሌሎች ከባድ መሳሪያዎች ታግዞ አዳሩን ውጊያ መክፈቱን ነው መረጃዎች ከስፍራው የሚያመላክቱት። ይህ የሚያሳየው የኢትዮጵያ መንግስት የባህር በር ጥያቄውን ለማሳካትና እውን ለማድረግ የሚያደርገውን እንቅስቃሴና ጉዞ ለመግታት እንደሆነና የኢትዮጵያ ለአንዴና ለመጨረሻ ጊዜ ባንዳ መሆናቸውን ለማሳየት ብሎም ከኤርትራ መንግስት ጋር ያላቸውን ቁርኝነትና ስምምነት ለማሳየት የተደረገ ነው። ከዚህ በኋላ ከህውሃት አንጃ ቡድን ጋር ኢትዮጵያውያን የሚያደርጉት ድርድርም አይኖርም። በኢትዮጵያ ብሔራዊ ጥቅም ላይ የተነሳ ቡድን መሆኑን መላው ኢትዮጵያውያን ከዳር ዳር ከሐስከፈ ተነቃንቆ ይህን ቡድን ማውገዝ ብቻ ሳይሆን መዋጋትም እንዳለበት ነው መረጃዎች እየወጡ የሚገኙት። ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን
CNN breaking news. Addis Ababa, October 2025. In a seismic shift for Ethiopia's future, Fano militia leaders have declared full readiness for peaceful dialogue with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government, answering repeated calls to choose talks over gunfire. Quote, "This is the moment Ethiopia has prayed for," a senior Fano commander said in a statement. "We lay down arms for our people's survival and the nation's unity," end quote. The breakthrough ends months of brutal clashes in Amhara, halting a crisis that claimed thousands of lives and displaced millions. Sources close to the negotiations confirm both sides will begin immediate ceasefire talks, mediated by elders and international partners. Analysts call it a game changer, stabilizing the Horn of Africa, restoring peace to the proud Amhara people, and unlocking Ethiopia's vital Red Sea port ambitions through diplomacy, not division. If sealed, this deal could mark the end of Ethiopia's deadliest internal conflict in decades and the dawn of lasting national renewal. CNN's team on the ground is tracking every development. This is history in the making. Stay with us. I'm Clarissa Ward, CNN International.
ፋኖ ከመንግስት ጋር ድርድር ለማድረግ ቁርጠኛ መሆኑና ዝግጅቱን ማጠናቀቁን በፋኖ አስረስ ማረዳምጤም የጎጃምን በሚወክሉ ፋኖዎች ማለት ነው እንዲሁም በሸዋ በወሎም በሁሉም አካባቢዎች እንደዚህ አይነት መረጃዎች እየወጡ ይገኛሉ። ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን መላው የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ በተለይ የአማራ ህዝብ እውነት ያድርገው ሰላም ለአማራ ክልል እንፈልጋለን። ይህ እውነት መሆን አለበት። የፋኖ ከመንግስት ጋር መታረቅ ከፍተኛ ውጤት አለው። በተለይ ኢትዮጵያ ለቀይ ባህር የምታደርገውን ጉዞም እውን ለማድረግ ብሎም አጠቃላይ በሀገሪቱ የሚደረጉ ልማቶችን እውን ለማድረግና ግብ እንዲደርሱ ለማድረግ የፋኖ ከመንግስት ጋር መደራደር ከፍተኛ ሚናና ዋጋ አለው ሲሉ ነው የተደመጡት። ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን ይሁን እንጂ በመንግስት በኩል ይፋ የወጣ መረጃ የለም። መረጃውን በስፋት አጣርተን በሌላ ዘገባ የምናደርሳችሁ ይሆናል። አሁን የምንቀጥለው ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ ያደረገውን የአረበኛ ሙሉ ቃለ መጠይቅ
Allow me, Mr. President, to move to another topic, which is what is happening in Sudan al-Fasar, and what is happening in al-Fasar has brought Sudan to face the events again and the geographical presence of Eritrea and Sudan. It is certain that Eritrea is a starting point for Sudan's future and dealing with this internal crisis. How did Eritrea turn into Sudan? Al-Fasar is not a problem. The question is whether Sudan is like Sudan or the people of Sudan. The truth is that Sudan is targeted. Sudan is targeted by regional and international forces. Sudan is targeted. The problems and crises that we see in Sudan are extensions of regional and non-regional aspirations to solve this problem strategically. It is the duty of the countries of this region to support the Sudanese people to get rid of this problem and restart the construction of the Sudanese state. Al-Fashr and Al-Fasar are the details of the details. The main problem is the invasion of Sudan to create problems for instability in the region. If Sudan is unstable, the Red Sea and the African continent will not be stable, or even countries in North Africa will not be stable. That is why Sudan is targeted. Sudan has been targeted since decades. The problem is not the problem of Al-Fashr or the problem of Nihala or the problem of another region in Sudan. These are the details. The main goal of the countries in Sudan is the instability so that there is an influence in the region. This is what is rejected from foreign intervention, whether regional or international. Does the intervener in Sudan need to intervene in Sudanese affairs? The example of the south of Sudan is always the example of Yaluk in the horizon. Sudan faces similar problems with new areas and borders. Does the intervener in Sudan need to intervene in this situation? Your answer is that Al-Fasar is the details of the details. Eritrea does not have temperamental choices, nor does Eritrea have temperamental choices. This is a reality. Sudan needs to settle so that the region settles, so that there is cooperation between all these countries to solve this problem. How does it settle? Foreign intervention needs to leave Sudan first. Foreign intervention needs to get rid of these conspiracies. Will these forces that are playing inside Sudan, in connection with your description, will leave on their own? This is not a matter of time. Time will tell, but the awareness of the Sudanese is higher than ever before. The countries of the region are beginning to understand what are the implications of what is happening inside Sudan. This creates awareness for cooperation, for regional cooperation and regional integration to solve the problem. The last question about the African distance to Eritrea. Is the relationship between Eritrea and the US and some European countries a good relationship that allows Eritrea to have a smooth diplomatic movement on the issue of the Red Sea, on the issue of the African continent, even on the issue of Sudan? Our responsibilities are limitless. The responsibility I mentioned is a duty, not a choice, for any country or any government. These countries must have a role in the wider distance. Africa is the biggest challenge. It is the land that will become a place for foreign intervention and for the development of the region. Africa is a region in the end of the world. There is a geography here and there. All these geographies must work together to build the African Union and other elements to solve the main challenges. The main challenge in Africa is development. The people of this continent live in what I call the era of slavery, the 21st century slavery. We steal their money, their resources, and then preserve the African geography as a market for high-priced products. The people of this continent are forced to build their economy through infrastructure, energy, and basic services. Even the provision of normal food for our citizens is forbidden due to foreign interference. Africa must free itself from this process. The African continent is a small part of the African continent. The most important thing is that the African continent is free in its beliefs. It is free in its beliefs and in its social, cultural, economic, and security problems. It has all the responsibilities to solve all these problems. The African governments have no choice. No government can get away from this problem. Eritrea is a small country that contributes to the liberation of Africa from colonialism and slavery. You referred to the African Union in your speech. What hinders the role of the African Union to actively intervene in crises? The Sudanese model, for example. We have no, frankly speaking, there is no African Union. This does not mean that the role of the African Union is diminished. The African Union was established about 60 years ago. The African Union was at the first stage. The African Union was established before the African Union. It was established to send a message to the free people. After the colonization, the African Union was formed, but it failed. The free people agreed to re-establish it. They agreed to make the African Union stronger than the African Union. The question is whether the African Union was in a position to challenge the African Union. The African Union is hidden. This does not mean that we do not care about the African Union, but the reality is that the African Union is not able to challenge the problems of the continent. This is due to local failure and foreign intervention. A local failure of the countries that face these problems. Yes, of the countries. Countries and governments are responsible for this failure, not the African Union. The African Union was established to solve these problems. The first responsibility lies with the governments and countries in the continent. Do we despair? No. The African Union must continue until there is a local organization capable of participating in all these confrontations. Is it the African countries that do not allow the African Union to participate in all these confrontations? Or is it that the African Union has all its tools but is not able to intervene? The African Union does not have a problem. The problem of the African Union is the countries themselves. The countries solve the problems of the continent first. Is there no blame game? One does not return to the blame game. The African Union does not work. The African Union has failed. The countries have failed in their own right. And the countries are responsible. This does not mean that we leave the African Union and forget something called a local organization. This is a challenge. This is a challenge for all the people of the continent. The continent has its own governments. Governments are responsible. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for accepting this invitation to the Cairo TV. Welcome to Cairo. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. This is the end of our dialogue in this area. I say goodbye to you. See you soon.
በተተረጎመው ቃለ መጠየቅ ላይ እንደሰማችሁት ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ ገና ከጅምሩ ቃለ መጠየቁን ያደረገው በአረበኛ ነው። የአረበኛ ቋንቋ ላይ የኢትዮጵያ ሕዝብ ብሎም መላው ዓለም ችግር ኖሮበት ሳይሆን ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ ቃለ መጠየቁን በአረበኛ ያደረገበት ምክንያት የአፍሪካ ህብረት ሙቷል፣ የአፍሪካ ህብረት የለም፣ የአፍሪካ ህብረት ደግሞ የምትመራው ኢትዮጵያ እንደመሆኗ መጠን ኢትዮጵያን ለመቃወም ያክል ነው አፍሪካ ህብረትን በማዋረድ ብሎም መሪዎቹንም በማዋረድ ያደረገው ቃለ መጠየቅ ነበር። እንግዲህ ክቡራን አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን የአረብ ሊግ ይሻለናል በሚል ደረጃ ነው እንግዲህ የኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ ቃለ መጠየቅ ሙሉ በሙሉ የአፍሪካ ህብረት እንደሞተ በተለይ የአፍሪካ ህብረት መቀመጫው ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ እንደመሆኑ መጠንና ኢትዮጵያም በአፍሪካ ህብረት ዙሪያ ከፍተኛ ውሳኔ እንደምታሳልፍና በተለይ ከቀይ ባህርና ከህዳሴው ግድብ ጋር በተያያዘ የአፍሪካ ህብረት ለኢትዮጵያ የዋለው ውለታ እጅግ በጣም ከፍተኛ መሆኑ ስለሚታወቅ ይህንንም ደግሞ ግብጽ ስለምትቃወም ነው እንግዲህ ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ የአፍሪካ ህብረትን በከፍተኛ ሁኔታ ሞራሉን በሚገል ሁኔታ አፍሪካ ውስጥ ተቀምጦ የአፍሪካ ህብረትን በመሳደብ እንግዲህ ሪከርዱን ሰብሮ ተገኝቷል። የአፍሪካ ህብረትም አስቸኳይ ስብሰባ በማድረግ በዚህ ሰው ላይ እርምጃ መውሰድ እንዳለበትና በተለይ ማዕቀብ መጣልም እንዳለበት የአፍሪካ ህብረት ቁርጠኝነቱን ጀግንነቱን ካላሳየ አሁንም በአፍሪካ ህብረት ህልውና ላይ የሚመጡ ሌሎች ኃይሎች እንደሚኖሩና የአፍሪካ ህብረት አቋሙን በደንብ አጠናክሮ በዚህ ዙሪያ ከፍተኛ የሆነ እርምጃ በመውሰድ አቋሙን በግልጽ ማሳየት አለበት። የአፍሪካ ህብረት አሁንም በዚህ ሰው ላይ እርምጃ መውሰድ እንዳለበት ነው በርካቶች እየገለጹ የሚገኙት። ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ እንግዲህ ከግብጽ ጋር ያለውን ሪሌሽን ሙሉ በሙሉ በቃለ መጠየቁ ሲያውጅ ማንኛውም ሀገር መጥቶ ወደ ኤርትራ የኤርትራን ሰላምና የአካባቢውን የቀጠናውን ማስጠበቅ አይችልም፣ ለግብጽ ግን ፈቅጃለሁ፣ ለግብጽ ሲሆን ምንም ችግር የለም፣ ግብጽ ግቢበት በሚል ደረጃ ይህ እንግዲህ ታርጌትሊ ካልኩሌት ተደርጎ ግብጽ ከኢትዮጵያ ጋር ያላትን ቅራኔ መሰረት አድርጎ በዚህ መነሻነት ነው ኢትዮጵያን ለመጉዳት በጥልቀት የሄደበት ነው ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ። የተከበራችሁ አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ በተደጋጋሚ ነጥብ እየጣለ ብቻም ሳይሆን ኢትዮጵያን ለማጥፋት በተለያዩ እንቅስቃሴዎቹም ተረርተነዋል አይተነዋል።